This episode of Doc Talk is brought to you by the Kappa Boot Scootin' Ball, featuring the president of the Redneck Yacht Club himself, Craig Morgan. Join us Friday, April 5th for the Knoxville's most talked about fundraiser of the year. The event will be packed with great country music provided by Craig Morgan, line dancing, Western-themed dinner, bottomless beverage, and an exclusive Kappa Boot Scootin' Ball souvenir mug. Additionally, a silent auction valued at more than $40,000. We have the opportunity for those in attendance to bid on some packages, including a Dynasty Spa. For tickets, visit kappabootscootin.com.
Hi, Elise Denaney here. As promised, we are here again with Dr. Dewey McWhirter. We have been able to persuade him to join us again for Doc Talk. Again, Doc Talk is the podcast put out by the Knoxville Academy of Medicine, which talks about health issues in plain language so that we can understand them. I'm Elise Denaney, former president of the Knoxville Academy of Medicine, and here joining us is Dr. Dewey McWhirter, the director of Tranquility Sleep Solutions, which is affiliated with Tenova and is our sleep center, which will address all issues from sleep apnea, insomnia, narcolepsy, restless leg syndrome. And so there's just so much to talk about, but today we're going to talk about insomnia. Hi, Dewey. How are you?
How are you doing?
I'm good. Okay, what's insomnia?
So insomnia is where people have trouble either falling asleep or staying asleep, or they wake up after several hours and they just can't get back to sleep after that. Or sometimes it's really...
Too much on my mind.
Which can be a big issue. And sometimes it's just that the sleep doesn't feel like you're sleeping very deeply, or you don't feel like you're getting very restorative sleep, really. But most of the time when people think of insomnia, it's trouble falling asleep or trouble staying asleep.
Yeah, I think people forget that it is important to sleep because it's important to restore your body and everything that it does for you so you're ready for the next day. And if you don't get that restoration, you're kind of starting the day behind the 8 ball.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, that's what happens at night. Is your body is trying to restore for the next day. Your brain's doing a lot of other active sort of things during that time, but you're also trying to get rid of neurotransmitter waste product. Is the best way to put it. That's in your brain that your body says, okay, he's asleep. Now we can get rid of that waste product that's left over from the neurotransmitters firing all day in your brain and everything. So you kind of have to restore yourself mentally and physically so you'll be ready for the next day.
Thanks. Okay, so to diagnose insomnia, we get a sleep study.
No, for insomnia, usually you're not doing a sleep study. I mean, sometimes you do. Insomnia, most of the time, is people coming in telling you what's going on and everything. And you do look for things you might find on a sleep study that could be causing them to have insomnia.
Okay.
But when we're really just talking about insomnia, it's not something you would diagnose with a sleep study. You might get a sleep study if you're worried that the reason they're waking up is because of sleep apnea, or because of what we call periodic limb movement disorder, which is something where people are kind of moving their legs every now and then in their sleep. But you're not going to do it just when you think, oh, they've just got more of a what we think of as insomnia related to anxiety, or insomnia related to what we call psychophysiologic insomnia, where people are just kind of worried about sleep a lot. I mean, there's a lot of other things that you just kind of go, okay, this is insomnia. We don't need a sleep study because this is just plain insomnia. So.
Okay, so I know how to take care of insomnia from a spouse kicking you or hitting you in the middle of the night. That's a totally different thing.
Right.
But how do you figure out what's causing insomnia for some of the things you mentioned?
Mm-hmm. So you usually have to get a history from the patient.
Okay.
I think what you were describing earlier was when people have sleep apnea and they're snoring and it's bothering you, you get the other person treated and that'll help with your insomnia. But when you are talking about regular insomnia, you really kind of have to say, okay, why is this happening? Why is this person having so much trouble sleeping? Is it related to anxious thoughts they're having at night? Is it related to depressed thoughts they're having at night? Is it that they are having a hard time kind of winding down? Are they having too much caffeine in the evenings? Are they having too much alcohol that's causing them to wake up later in the night? Are they doing other things that are not conducive to getting a good night's sleep, like having bright lights in the room or being exposed to a lot of bright light before they go to bed at night? Are they having issues where they're having serious discussions with their spouse every night in the bed and that sort of thing? So a lot of it can be related to The bed is supposed to be this place that is relaxing, where you go there and you just kind of passively fall asleep. But at some point, stress has been induced into that place, and it's no longer a relaxing place. It's a place where you think about things. It's a place where you try to have this conversation with your spouse that you didn't have all day, or you try to catch up on the TV show you wanted to watch that's on the TV.
Oh, so electronics are not good in the bedroom.
We discourage them in the bedroom in general, especially in the bed, because, again, it's that your body associates different places with different things, and you want your body to only associate that bed with sleep. You don't want it to associate it with, watching TV or with having a conversation, figuring out all your life's problems. You don't want any of that stuff to be part of what is your bedtime routine or part of your nighttime activity when you're in that bed. It's just for sleep.
Okay, good message to remember. Now, what about kids who have weird sleep cycles?
So, all right, I think you're referring mostly to teenagers here, when they get to be teenagers and they start getting really sleepy later at night, and then they sleep late into the morning. I mean, that is probably a natural thing. I mean, it really seems to be all throughout the planet. Teenagers don't get sleepy until later, and they don't want to wake up until later. And it really does seem to be their normal circadian rhythm for that time. Your
school system has to catch up.
The school system definitely needs to catch up, yes. And they've gotten better about it. Most of them have gotten better about it. There are definitely school systems around the country that have not caught up. But they really need to, especially if they're trying to, if they're trying to increase their standardized scores and whatnot. It really looks like, in high school at least, if you make the start time later for the school, test scores improve. And it's because they're not supposed to be awake at that time. And I always wonder if it has something to do with this. Our ancestors are in the village somewhere, and you have some of the older villagers get sleepy a little bit earlier. So they're going to bed early, but then they're waking up at like 4 or 5 a.m. And then, the middle-aged ones are all going to bed at, say, 10 o'clock at night, getting up at 6 or 7. And then you have these teenagers who are up till 1 a.m. and sleeping until 10 o'clock. Well, that might make it so you have somebody awake watching over the village most of the night. That probably was actually good, yeah. So it probably has some sort of advantage for our ancestors, but really, if you're if you're a kid who's trying to fit into the modern world, it can be kind of hard to do. And there's different degrees of it. I mean, we mostly don't see teenagers who they're not getting sleepy until 11 and they're getting up at 7 or 8 or something for school. We're mostly seeing the ones where it's really bad. They really fall into what we call delayed sleep phase syndrome, which is where they don't really get that sleepy until much later at night, like 1 a.m. or 2 a.m., and they have a really hard time getting up in the mornings. And they have a much later cycle than the rest of us as far as their sleep cycles. When they've got that, it can be really hard because everybody is kind of saying to them, hey, you've got to do this, you've got to do this, and it just takes discipline. All right, so discipline does help with it, but it's a lot of discipline, especially for a teenager to come up with. Yeah. And so it's always hard when kids come in. You always have to explain to the parents what's probably going on with this and what they need to do. And I mean, there are things you can do for it. If it's really just delayed sleep phase syndrome and they're having problems at school because they can't get up early enough in the morning and everything, then a lot of times you do have to start doing things like blue blocker sunglasses. So they'll wear these blue blocker sunglasses in the evening starting around 8 o'clock or so. And that's going to reduce the amount of blue light exposure that they're getting during the evening.
Wow. So
blue light, which we have when we're outside a lot, yeah. Blue light actually suppresses melatonin secretion in your brain. And melatonin plays a role in your body's normal circadian rhythms. So if you have something that's suppressing you have blue light suppressing that melatonin all the time, well, then you're not going to have a normal circadian rhythm. You're going to be going to bed later. When we're talking about kids who have delayed sleep phase syndrome, they're already having a problem where their melatonin high point isn't happening until later than everybody else's. So if you then also add on this blue light to it, then you're really going to have a problem. It's really going to be a lot later that they have the high point of their melatonin that makes them sleepy.
Amazing. So I had a friend, and he was having some trouble sleeping, and so he said he took melatonin.
Yes. Yeah, melatonin will also help with delayed sleep phase syndrome. But you have to be careful about melatonin. You have to figure out when to take it. And with teenagers who are having delayed sleep phase syndrome, they usually need to take it about 5 hours before they're initial goal bedtime, like the initial time that we're hoping to get them to sleep at night. And that's because you're trying to pull that high point of your melatonin levels to an earlier time.
Okay.
So it's kind of an odd thing. By taking melatonin pills, you can change the time that your body's high point in melatonin happens.
Okay.
And it's usually kind of this gradual thing that happens where you take it at the same time every day, and it happens a little bit earlier, a little bit earlier, a little bit earlier, that your body's natural high point of melatonin happens. So,
how much?
it could take weeks.
Okay. Okay.
It can take months even,
Just
but
be
usually
patient.
it's several. Yeah, it's sort of thing you have to be patient about. I do feel like kids get a pretty good improvement in this if they are taking the melatonin and they're using the glasses together. A lot of times that'll work really well to kind of do it faster. You can also, there was one study somebody did where they basically took a bunch of kids out camping for 2 weeks. And after 2 weeks of no artificial light exposure whatsoever, these delayed sleep phase kids had moved significantly earlier in their bedtimes.
That's amazing. Could have been the fresh air maybe too.
It could be the fresh air too.
Yeah.
Well, the exercise, and exercise is also very important for sleep. So,
It is.
yeah.
It is. I know we've transitioned into a society where, unfortunately, we don't exercise as much, either in our professions or in our daily life, and then, so we're not so tired.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's that we're not so tired, and just it changes your sleep when you exercise. Not only does it make you more tired, so you're more likely to sleep, but it also increases how much deep sleep you get, which is a little more restorative feeling to people. When they get more deep sleep, they wake up feeling more restored and ready to go, really.
Amazing. So I'm going to jump from kids,
Okay.
Adults.
All right.
So adults can take melatonin too, or what about adults who are already on medication?
So melatonin, the main thing you worry about is if you're on anticoagulants, if you're on things like warfarin.
Oh.
There is some theoretical concern about taking those with melatonin. Usually, if it's warfarin, what we tell people is if you're really going to take melatonin, make sure the doctor who has you on the warfarin knows you're taking it, and they might follow your levels a little bit more closely for a while there to make sure it's not really messing up your levels. But for the most part, I mean, melatonin's in your body. It's already there, so we don't worry as much about people taking it. We do see problems where patients will come in and they say, well, I'm doing shift work, I switch shifts every 3 days,
Right.
and they're trying to take melatonin every time they're going to sleep, and they're taking it in the morning, they're taking it at night, they're taking it in the morning, they're taking it at night. Their body gets really confused because your melatonin levels, you lose that kind of high point level that they normally have. So really, if you're going to take melatonin, most of the time you're going to want to say, okay, I'm going to take it about the same time every night, and it's going to be maybe an hour before I go to bed or something like that, around that time period.
Okay. Adults who need something stronger than melatonin to help them sleep?
So yeah, we see a lot of patients who have tried things like melatonin, or they've tried things like Benadryl, and they're having issues still with insomnia, and they come in to see us about that. So yeah, there are other medications we use for treating insomnia, things like Zolpidem, things like Lunesta. You've probably seen many commercials for these drugs over the years, and those medications do have a place in treatment of insomnia. But we really prefer for those things to be short-term treatments. There's been a lot of advertising over the years by the pharmaceutical company really kind of encouraging these medications, and those medications, again, they do have their place. They are good short-term treatments for insomnia. But there was a study well, not a study, there's been a lot of studies over time that have suggested there might be long-term consequences of taking those medications. People might be at increased risk for getting dementia. They might be at increased risk for cancers. They might be at increased risk for all causes of death, pneumonia. There's all these different concerns that have come up about taking these medications long-term. Really, what is your best bet for treating insomnia long-term is what we call cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. Now, that's not for all types of insomnia, but for most insomnia, that's going to be your best bet. And that's where you work with a psychologist who's trained in insomnia issues. And they kind of ask you a lot of questions at first. So a lot of it's just, what are you doing before you go to bed at night? What sort of thoughts do you have in the bed at night? How do you react to it when you do have those thoughts in the bed? And then they make a plan. And the plan's idea or purpose is to be able to make it so you can get into bed and passively fall asleep without interfering thoughts, without any sort of stressful thoughts, without it being a pressured situation to get to sleep at night. And that actually works better than any of the medications that are out there on the market. And that's what always seems crazy as a sleep doctor is you'll go to the big sleep conference every year that they have. At the Big Sleep Conference, they always have things, these poster presentations organized by aisles. And there'll be an aisle that is the insomnia aisle. And on one side, it'll have pharmaceutical treatment for insomnia. On the other side, it'll have non-pharmaceutical treatment for insomnia. The pharmaceutical side has the most beautiful posters you've ever seen in your entire life. They're full color, they're 3D, they're just amazing posters. The other side has pieces of paper, they're just tacked up on the board there because there's no funding behind it. There's no money encouraging people to try these treatments that have been shown to be very effective. And it's just always kind of ironic because you look at the side that's all sparkly, and we know on average, really, if you do sleep studies, patients are probably getting about 20 minutes of increased sleep time on the sleep aids, versus on average you get about an hour of increased sleep time for cognitive behavioral therapy.
That is a great message. I love the fact that we have the ability and the research to have drugs when we need them. It's just like antibiotics. Too many antibiotics is not a good thing. Too many of anything is not a good thing. So using the medication judiciously, and thank you so much for pointing that out, is the right way to use it. Maybe just to hit the reset button. And too often, if there's not some sort of money to be gained behind something, it's not considered sexy enough.
Right.
Yeah. So, but that is really great information. So thank you so much.
No problem.
That was really great to learn. So that's just a little bit about insomnia. Really good information to know about insomnia. I know for me, sometimes I just have too much on my mind. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, if viewers have more questions about insomnia, how would they get a hold of you?
Well, they can go to our website, Tranquility Sleep Specialists. You can find that on Google. And they can go to our Contact Us page there, which has one of those little boxes you can fill in with a question. It also has an email address you can send stuff to. But they should be able to contact us on there, or they can give us a call at Nova Sleep Centers. But probably the best way is through that website.
Wow, that's amazing. I don't think I know anybody who's not been affected by insomnia in one way or another, and I think it's a very natural thing to happen, and also a very natural thing to get over. And so thank you so much for sharing your expertise in it today with us.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, and that's a wrap, guys.
This episode of Doc Talk is brought to you by the Kappa Boot Scootin' Ball, featuring the president of the Redneck Yacht Club himself, Craig Morgan. Join us Friday, April 5th for the Knoxville's most talked about fundraiser of the year. The event will be packed with great country music provided by Craig Morgan, line dancing, Western-themed dinner, bottomless beverage, and an exclusive Kappa Boot Scootin' Ball souvenir mug. Additionally, a silent auction valued at more than $40,000 will give the opportunity for those in attendance to bid on some packages, including a Dynasty Spa. For tickets, visit kappabootscootin.com.